Welcome to video number 3 for Chapter 34, Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the Shadow of War. After the fall of Poland, Hitler positioned his forces to attack France, which then led to a lull in the war, so that men could move. This was pierced only by the Soviet Union's attack and conquering of Finland, despite $30 million from the United States for non-military reasons. Then, in 1940, the phony war ended when Hitler overran Denmark and Norway, and then took over the Netherlands and Belgium. Blitzing without mercy, he then struck a paralyzing blow towards France, which was forced to surrender by late June of that year. The fall of France was shocking, especially to the Americans, because now all that stood between Hitler and the world was Great Britain. If the English lost, Hitler would have all of Europe in which to operate, and he might take over the Americas as well. Finally, Roosevelt moved and called for the nation to massively build up its armed forces, with expenses totaling more than $37 million. He also had Congress pass the first peacetime draft, which is called conscription, in U.S. history on September 6, 1940. 1.2 million troops and 800,000 reserves would be trained. At the Havana Conference, the U.S. warned Germany that it could not take over orphan colonies in the Americas, as such an action would not be tolerated. There were many refugees from the Holocaust and Germany's advance in Europe. The Kristallnacht, meaning the Night of Broken Glass, happened on November 9, 1938, as German mobs ransacked Jewish shops and synagogues. 91 Jews were killed and more than 30,000 were sent to concentration camps on that night. Trying to flee Hitler's onslaught, 937 Jews boarded the St. Louis and headed for Miami. Americans turned them away due to the restrictive immigration laws. After being turned away from Canada as well, they landed in England, where they were divided among England, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, where many perished at the hands of the Nazis. After reports of the Nazi genocide were confirmed in 1942, Roosevelt created the War Refugee Board, saving over 150,000 Jews from the Nazi death camps. The United States chose not to bomb Nazi gas chambers during the war. And in July 1944, U.S. authorities decided not to bomb Auschwitz, even though they knew it existed. American officials explained this decision, in part using a technical argument that their aircraft did not have the capacity to conduct air raids on such targets with sufficient accuracy. The Allies were committed to bombing exclusively military targets in order to win the war as quickly as possible. Now, with Britain the only fighting power remaining against Germany, FDR had to decide whether to remain totally neutral or to help Great Britain. Hitler launched air attacks against the British in August 1940 and prepared an invasion scheduled to start a month later, but the tenacious defense of the British Royal Air Force stopped him in the aerial Battle of Britain. Those who supported helping Britain formed the Committee to Defend America by aiding the Allies. Those who continued to support isolationism, including Charles A. Lindbergh, were in the America First Committee, and both groups campaigned and advertised for their respective positions and for the support of the American people. Britain was in dire need of destroyers, and on September 2, 1940, FDR boldly moved to transfer 50 old-model four-funnel destroyers left over from World War I. In return, the British promised to give the United States 8 valuable defensive base sites stretching from Newfoundland to South America. These would stay in American ownership for 99 years. The American public was beginning to favor sending Britain all aid short of war. In 1940, it was thought that Robert A. Taft of Ohio or Thomas E. Dewey would be the Republican candidate for the presidential election, but a colorful and magnetic newcomer went from a nobody to a candidate in a matter of weeks. Wendell Willkie became the Republican against Democratic candidate Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he waited until the last moment to challenge the two-term tradition. So FDR is going to now run for a third term. The Democrats felt that FDR was the only man qualified to be president, especially in so grave of a situation and an international crisis that was currently going on. Willkie and FDR weren't really different in the realm of foreign affairs, but Willkie hit hard with his attacks about FDR breaking Washington's precedent and running for a third term. Still, Franklin Delano Roosevelt won because voters felt that, should the war come, FDR was the best man to lead America because of his experience previously as president. Britain was running out of money, but Roosevelt didn't want all the hassles that came with calling back debts. So he came up with an idea of a Lend-Lease program. And in this program, the arms and ships that the U.S. lent to the nations that needed them would be returned when they were no longer needed. Send guns, not sons, to Europe is what the Americans thought. America would be the arsenal of democracy. And America would send limitless guns to anyone who was fighting the aggressors in Europe. The Lend-Lease bill was argued over heatedly in Congress, but it was passed, and by war's end, America had sent about $50 billion worth of arms and equipment. The Lend-Lease Act was basically the end of the neutrality policy. Hitler recognized this as well and viewed it as a declaration of war. Before, German submarines had avoided attacking American ships, but after the passage, they started to fire upon U.S. ships, such as, on May 21, 1941, torpedoing of the Robin Moor. Germany also begins attacking U.S. merchant ships wherever they could find them. This is the works cited page. All of the images used in this presentation are from the public domain.